My name's Charlie Thomas, and I get a lot of questions about two-sided carving and how to zero your machine out. So today I'm going to make a little video to show you how it's done. Setting up your CNC machine for two-sided zeroing requires that the y-axis side of this piece of wood that's on this machine here is lined up with the travel. So what we've got here, I've got a clamp here, there's a clamp here, and back here, and then another one here. Notice these two clamps are not engaged. You leave these off while you're setting up your board for alignment. This clamp will be put on not tight. You want to leave it fairly loose. This one is just sitting in place. It's not tight at all. You want this one tight enough to hold the front of the workpiece down, but still allow it to be able to be moved if necessary. Okay. Then you're going to take a bit, any router bit, put it in upside down in your spindle so that just the round portion is sticking out, not the cutting edge. Then you're going to jog your machine over so that it's right up against the wood. Now a better way of doing that is put your bit where you want the wood to be, and then put the wood down and slide it up to the bit. And then just align your material down the length of the y-axis where it looks pretty straight. Then set up all your clamps. Okay, once you have that up and this bit is actually touching the wood, then you want to jog your machine as far back this direction as you can. You want to start as far forward as you can without hitting a clamp, but when you jog backwards, you're going to jog all the way down, and make sure you don't move the x-axis left or right. Leave it just exactly where it's at. Just jog straight back in the y-axis. And let me see if I can jog my machine here. So you're going to run it back down. Of course, it won't wiggle as much as mine does. Right down here to where it stops right before you get to the clamp. Okay? And then you're going to make sure when you get back here that this wood is still touching this bit. If it's sitting off to the right, if you got a gap, then just gently push it over from the back. You don't want to move the front. You want to leave the front of this where it's at. That's why you got this clamp. It's just snug. And this one is loose, and these are not engaged, and that'll allow you to pivot on this point right here. So any movement will be swinging around back here. Anyway, so you'll move your wood over until it's touching the bit. Then you'll tighten up this clamp. Not super tight, but you know, just snug it up like you did the front. At that point, you're going to jog your bit all the way back up to here again. I'm not going to move this gantry, it'll look kind of silly. Anyway, you'll jog all the way back up to the front, make sure that it's still engaged. Okay. If it is, everything looks good, then secure this clamp tight and this clamp so that they're both down good and tight like you would have it for carving. And then you're going to take these two clamps and move them over so that they're engaging the wood here, and this, so it's clamped down. Now you may have more clamps or clamps in different places, but just for setting your alignment, use a clamp at the front edge all the way at the very corner, and one at the back all the way at the back corner. Now then, this will ensure that your wood is perfectly aligned with the travel of the y-axis. And that's important, because when you flip this wood over and this corner or this edge of the wood is now over here, we're going to zero to this corner. But this would be considered the top of the project for a two-sided carving. You would start your zeroing at this front left corner with a touch plate, and this would be the top. When you rotate this board over, this corner is where you do the same alignment we just did here, only you'll do it on this side instead. You'll put your bit right up against the edge of the wood, jog it all the way back, and make sure that it's still touching. If it's not, you'll swing that back side around till it does touch, and then double check the front to make sure it's good. Now, it doesn't matter where this piece of wood is actually located when you flip it. You could have this thing sitting over here somewhere when you flip it over, and that's okay. The touch plate will compensate for that just fine. But what's important is this edge cannot be twisted. If your material is skewed like this, it won't work. It needs to be straight. And so that's how you set up your material for two-sided carvings. So side A, side 1, front, whatever you want to call it, 0 to this corner, align your bit on this side, and then when you flip it over, you 0 to this corner and run your bit down this edge for alignment purposes. So with that understood, we'll jump over and I'll show you how to set up the actual carving itself. Okay, here I've got a clock face that, as you can see, is off center on this piece of material that we have set up. And that's intentional. Normally you'd put it in the middle, but I've done this intentionally so I can demonstrate on how to carve the back side and still keep the alignment of where the center hole is. So first thing we need to do is we create a layer called front, and then we'll copy all of this. So just select it all, right click, and copy to layer, new layer, and we'll call this the back. And say OK. So now we're going to turn off the front layer, make sure we have the back layer selected. Okay. Then we're going to take all this right here and we're going to flip it. So we use this button right here, this mirrored selected vectors. So click on that one. We don't want to create a mirrored copy. We're going to actually flip it. And we're going to flip it horizontal about the job center. So we're just going to say flip horizontal. So now you can see we're looking at the back side of this clock. The front side is still intact. So let me go back to the front here and show you the setup. I should have showed you that first. So we're just looking at the front side. So when we create the job, we just put in our measurements of everything, and we want to do left front corner right here. So the front of the project, the red dot down here, left front corner is where we'll 0 to. Say OK to that. So at this point you could actually mount your material and you could carve, you know, the numbers and drill the hole, whatever other features you want to put on your clock. And then when you're ready to do the back side, you would flip this board over so that this edge would now be over here. And if you could see through the wood, this is what you would see. Okay? So the edge that was over here is now over here. So to keep the alignment, since this is not in the center, we want to 0 to this corner. Okay? So what we can do is we'll just go over to the toolpath. Actually, we need to create a feature first. So on the back side of a clock, you'll have your clock mechanism, which is typically a square box. Make sure you're on the back layer. Okay, so I'm going to draw a square there. That's about right. We'll close that and we'll use this button to center that over this hole. So I've got the square there and then the hole selected, and I'm just going to say center on the selected vector. Now this box is squared or centered over this hole. If you didn't catch that, let me do this. I'm going to move this box up here. So now I want to select the box or the square and then select where I want to center over, and then I select this option right here and boom, there it is. It's a good way to center stuff. Okay, so anyway, now we're looking at the back side. So let's go to the toolpath menu, Close that. Go over here. So let's go back to the front of the clock. We'll turn off the back layer, turn on the front layer, and here you would generate your toolpath to do all the carvings. Let's just do a quick toolpath. We'll do a quick, actually let's do a V-carve. That looks nicer. So we'll V-carve that, that, and that with a, what do I have, a bit, a 90-degree V-bit. Yeah, that looks good. So we're going to calculate that. So there's our numbers. Close. Now we want to drill this hole. So we're going to need to choose a drilling tool. And I've got a 1/4 inch bit selected, which is fine. And we're going to drill down. Well, just say 1 inch, calculate. Yeah, it's going to go through. So now we have the hole. And if we preview it, let's preview all toolpaths. There we go. So there's the inside part of the clock. Now we don't want to do a profile just yet because then we'd have a round disc laying there and no way to zero to it. So we won't do this profile till the very end. Okay. So now that we have the front of the clock carved, let's go to the back. So we're going to switch to the back layer, turn that layer on, turn the front layer off. Make sure that you have back selected. Now we want to cut this pocket. Of course, we don't want to cut all the way through, but before we do create this toolpath, we need to make a change. We can go to the set up here. We want to use the right corner, right front for zeroing. Okay, so now we're zeroing over here. Before we turn the wood over, this physical corner of the wood was over here. So since we flipped it, now it's over here. So we're going to zero to this corner. And we're going to say OK, but we're not going to recalculate any tool paths. Okay? Because if you say yes right here, you're going to recalculate the front side based on the wood being flipped over. You don't want to do that. You want to leave it left corner. So we're going to say no to that. And now we can generate a toolpath for this pocket. So we're going to select the pocket, and we're only going to go, we'll say 0.5 inches deep, and we get a 1/8 inch end mill. That's fine. We'll calculate that, and now we'll preview this toolpath. Preview, select the toolpath. So there's the pocket. Now we've already drilled this hole, so it's not showing up in the toolpath preview because this can only show one at a time. But because you zero into this corner, everything will still be in alignment, and this pocket will be where it needs to be. And that's a simple way to do the whole thing.